The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Glen is joined by licensed independent clinical social worker Kim Morgan to talk about the beauty of the Catholic Church to attract. Glen?
Well, time to say hi to one of our favorite regular guests here on Morning Air. Kim Morgan joins us from St. Louis. She's a Catholic wife and mom, licensed independent clinical social worker, and a lover of all things beautiful, especially in the church. Great to have you along. Happy Epiphany, Christmas, New Year, and, all those kinds of things to you, Kim.
Well, thank you, Glenn. It's so good to be with you this morning. And I also wish you the same of all these beautiful festive days that we have in our liturgical calendar. It's been quite joyous this year.
I know in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about one of the things that can be attractive for people to the Catholic Church, not just because we have the Savior, the creator of the universe here to offer himself up so we could be with him forever, but, some of the worldly things that appeal to people include the beauty that is found along with the good and the true in our Catholic Church. And coming out of, most still have the stuff up, right? Some of the most beautiful church decorations, some of the most beautiful smells, and all of that throughout the course of the year during Christmas time here. And we're talking today a little bit about how that can attract. And are we downplaying that sometimes too much? Or is this a good time to remind people, hey, if you enjoyed what the experience was like, come on, keep coming back, trying to get those Christmas and Easter people to be, hey, once a month people and work from there.
Well, it is an interesting phenomenon because the church historically has had the most beautiful and the most amount of, as they say, smells and bells of most any place you could be to worship, including incense, stained glass windows, the sounds within the church, the smells of candle wax burning on a night where the lights are out and you're there at a vigil mass or a midnight mass to hear the gospel and to participate in the Eucharist. And it's interesting to me that time and time again, I talk to families and people that are not Catholic, but will go to a Catholic church on high feast days because that's what draws them. That's what attracts them. And yet you talk to Catholics and sometimes you find they want it more simple and they like the more simple praise and worship, the more simple Eucharistic Mass that doesn't have a lot of that. So it's an interesting dynamic as to what draws us in. But time and time again, I think we can go back to the church and her history of creating these beautiful spaces to be. And they're beautiful sometimes because they're a little different, right? They don't look like everything else. They don't look like a theater or a stadium or a gathering place that you would do other things in. It looks sacred. And that kind of beauty, I think we should talk about. I think we should explore it. I think we can focus on that and really make some decisions in our lives about why is this important? And maybe that keeps drawing us to come back again.
Well, it certainly is one of the things that can do that. And when we think of the history of why all the fancy things, well, it was the one place that the fancy things could exist for the average person to see back in the days before museums, or very many of them, or easy access to them. This allowed the average person to see great art, but much more than that, pointed people to Christ in a time when people, if they didn't know Latin, they might have just been doing well to be there at Mass way back in the day. And even if they couldn't read much, they could look at the stained glass windows and the story that was told there. Look at the statues and the story that was told there. And so the building itself was an evangelistic tool.
That's exactly right. And I follow on social media this really neat group that focuses on old architecture in St. Louis. And just this week, the Cathedral Basilica came up. And as many may know, that it's the largest collection of mosaics in the Western Hemisphere. It is an incredibly ginormous cathedral. It looks like something right out of Europe. And having that kind of treasure and that kind of beauty right before your eyes is really something. And we've even been blessed to go to several weddings there and see the weddings. You don't even have to decorate because it's so ornately decorated in and of itself. But that extraordinary piece of the architecture, what sets us apart, everything about things in the Catholic Church are extraordinary. We don't burn incense anywhere else. We don't hear bells that ring at a consecration anywhere else. We don't typically, I mean, some have some stained glass in their homes, but we don't typically have a house fully ornately decorated with stained glass. So everything is pointing to the extraordinary and created to be extraordinary. And why? Why do we do that? Well, because the Savior of the universe is there. He is present. He's in usually a gold-plated, gold-filled tabernacle to show the importance of this. And I think that for the common person way back in the day that didn't understand the language, didn't understand everything about it, knew innately by how it was represented that it was extraordinary. And even you touch on Latin, and I think that's an interesting thing because it's not necessarily about, do we do Novus Ordo Mass, do we do the Extraordinary Form Mass, but the idea that Latin back then was more common to say the Mass in, but right now, even that is that embellishment. It's a language embellishment that we do to set apart how we worship. And as Catholics, again, that falls under that umbrella of extraordinary because we don't walk around really saying Latin that much. I mean, maybe we hear phrases occasionally in a song on a radio, but not as often as you hear it within a Mass. So I love that we're always a little extra as Catholics, right? It's just, it's a way that sets Christ apart and shows the importance of the Eucharist in that.
Hey, on the radio here, we're doing our best in morning air to use English properly, let alone Latin. So we're trying to hang in there. Over Christmas, of course, the height of beauty in so many of the places we worship at. Is there a moment each year or something that strikes you different, perhaps on different years, where it's like, oh, that is a moment of sight, sound, and smell that I'm going to remember for a while?
There is. I like the darkness when you come into church for the late at night Mass, and many would call it midnight. Sometimes they get started a bit early, but that night Mass where it's dark. And what comes with that darkness, for whatever reason, is the quiet, the stillness of the night. And I just feel that sense of quiet and almost loneliness that maybe Mary had, knowing that she was in a stable, far from the people that probably supported her in her life up to that point. It was her and Joseph holding hands tight, waiting for this baby to arrive in the quiet of the night. And we picture it at night because we know the kings came by star, so they had to be able to see the stars, so the skies were dark. And I think it's cool because every once in a while you'll just get a glimpse, even in the biggest of churches with the most packed seating and the folding chairs, that even the little babies are quiet for a moment. If you sit there long enough, there's those few moments where it's just totally quiet in that dark church. And it gives me that sense of anticipation for Christmas Day, that waiting for the light to come to us and our Redeemer to be here. And I think that's one of the things I treasure most about the Christmas season is when I can catch those moments of quiet.
With some of those versions of Silent Night sung by candlelight with a full church, hard to beat that for, like you said, even the smells of the candles, but the sight of nothing but candlelight and those voices all joining together. And on the other hand of the Christmas spectrum there, another pretty good cathedral up the river in St. Paul, Minnesota, a towering, beautiful European-style building as well. When the big organ pulls out all the stops for Joy to the World, that's a kind of a spine-tingling moment as well. But, that's some of the beauty that can draw us in. Yet we find ourselves in a society sometimes that likes things just kind of simplified. And then there'll even be, altruistic arguments for keeping it simple and spending the money on feeding the poor and things like that. And our faith allows for all of that, actually. But for those that might criticize the beauty, as a cradle Catholic who grew up with that beauty, what are some good and honest and earnest answers we can give?
I think one of the things we can talk about, and let's jump on the music for a minute, because I'm a huge music lover, sang in the church choir for years. And I think that the music is something that speaks to people's soul. And you may not understand all the readings and the these and the thous, and maybe Father's talking about something that you're not quite familiar with in his homily. But the music is a way that we can pray. It's a way that we can evangelize. It's a way that we can teach. And again, when we see these high feast occasions, we see a lot of times the music programs pulling out all the extra stops, which of course is your reference to the beautiful organs, but also they'll add in trumpets or string instruments or something to further embellish the music on these special occasions. And as much as we can say, yes, we could spend the money on something else, maybe we are spending the money on something important, and that's how we give that message to others. And like you say, when people were looking to discover art and beauty, they would go to the churches in historical times. And that's still true today, that the church protects these beautiful things and makes it available for many, many more people than could ever privately own any of that type of art. So again, through the beauty, the good, the true, and the beautiful, that's how we invite people to be on the journey, be on the mission, to have a very intimate relationship with Christ, a very humble relationship with Christ in the midst of all that beauty. And I think that beauty is a great representation of a glimpse of heaven, like how beautiful it will be when we rejoin our Creator, that it's not always going to be plain and worn out carpet and uncomfortable chairs, but actually we might have something just incredible we can't even imagine yet. So I think that would be my answer to that, as well as defending the church and its great generosity to having a huge historical, strong track record of caring for the poor, the marginalized, the downtrodden in our communities on a day-to-day basis, no matter what their religious affiliation.
Just thinking, too, of the experience of worship from how it's put together technically, no matter how old or new some of the things are that we're looking at. But if we're trying to reach out to people, we live in an age where more technological perfection is expected. Relevant Radio started on AM radio, but many listen to FM. We're on FM in many spots. We're on the app. We're also on the computer, so you can stream that audio in pristine quality. The idea to be where people expect you to be and kind of in the way they expect you to be as well, as we add more video to the mix too with Relevant Radio. And that might just speak to the need to do things professionally, whether it be, a more contemporary Catholic service, whether it might be in Latin, but to do it professionally, because if we're reaching people, they expect competence in something that they see.
That is a very strong argument that I would never, ever try to argue against, that we need to be the best version of ourselves, and if that means we have paid professional people to lead us in music or be professional lectors. We pick the cream of the crop to represent us. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also one of those things that you could counter it and say, but watching people emerge from our congregations, emerge from who we are as a community of Catholics, and give of their time, talent, and treasure, I think is an important aspect to it. And neither are right, neither are wrong. They're all part of the church. We're one body with many parts. So we can go to a church that looks a little bit less ornate, that has a little bit more contemporary music, or a lot more contemporary music and a lot less ornate. And we can also find those old traditions with you walk in and you can just smell the incense has been absorbed into the walls for 100 years, or that the music is going to be very quiet and reverent in that type of mass. And I think that's the beauty of being Catholic, is there's so many of us with so many different aspects. I mean, think about it. I'm just giving it from maybe a North American point of view. Think about how the music is different in Africa or in Italy or in Russia. Their culture is infused into the Mass in some ways. It's part of who the people are. So yes, we certainly can have professional musicians, and many people expect that, enjoy it, and seek that in their masses that they attend. But also there's something to be said for the person that's in the pew to come forward and say, yes, I will answer the call to lead and to sing or to read or to serve in some way in the church.
Just a quick minute left here, and just thinking, Kim, about the beauty and how the traditional beauty maybe ironically really appeals to our current younger generation.
It is kind of interesting. The younger generation seems to be seeking something that's more. What sets us apart? Why should I bother? Of all the choices I have and all the things I can access through whatever device that I have, my phone, my tablet, my computer, why should I choose this over that? And sometimes that tradition is what they're looking for because it is so unique. The music is different. It does smell different. The seats are old and wooden and creak, and the kneelers are kind of worn out and hurt your knees a bit. And the words are kind of foreign in a way that I've never heard a foreign language before. When you hear the Latin, almost monotone like chanting that can go on before or during a mass, they want to know why. Why is the Catholic Church different? And this is the why, because we are. That does make it kind of attractive, I think, to the young people. It's been an interesting swing of events watching so many young people and just these more traditional churches just bursting at the seams with young families too, and raising their kids in that tradition as well. That's not to say that's the only way, but it's certainly interesting to watch this movement of the pendulum go back more to the tradition.
Thanks for your thoughts on the good, the true, and the beautiful as we focus on the beauty with Kim Morgan today. Thank you, Kim. Look forward to chatting again next time.
This entire episode of Morning Air is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today, and thanks for listening.